Hi, and welcome to the Live and Sometimes Well podcast, a trauma informed business ish podcast for folks who see life as art and on all things business, relationships, and mental health. I'm Alyssa Pressman, a licensed therapist, certified coach, and space holder for space holders, creatives, entrepreneurs, and magic makers.
Beautiful. And I'm Rachel Turner, a trauma informed business coach for misfits, artists, and creatives. And today we're talking about all things alcohol sobriety, what it's like to not drink in a culture that centers most social events around drinking, how weird people can be about us not drinking, the good parts of alcohol sobriety, and the hard parts. We'll chat about how we got here, our whys, and what it feels like to raw dog it through life.
Yes, it really is. Someone said that to me one time when I said I didn't drink and that I also didn't drink caffeine. And they were like, "You're really out here raw dogging it." And I was like, wow, what a crass and beautiful way to describe how I feel.
Yeah.
I'm really out here. I feel like all my nerves are always exposed and I'm just experiencing everything with like nothing to dull it. And I'm like, shit, this is intense. But would I have it any other way? No.
No.
Because then what would I complain about? I would find something, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, we're super excited to chat about this. But first, let's do our highs and lows. You go first.
Okay. Highs and lows. I have a very exciting high today.
Oh my God.
Um, okay, so you know how like in the coaching space, people are always like, you have to celebrate your wins, like, and everyone's like buying Chanel bags. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's great, but like I just don't want a Chanel bag.
Okay.
And people
Fair.
like put a lot of pressure on like it being a designer thing or it being like this huge thing. And I just never really related to that until I was watching Selling Sunset, which I watched all 3 seasons in 3 days. And then I started rewatching the third season because I love it so much.
Yeah.
And Christine, the like villain of the show, wore this Balenciaga sweater. And I thought to myself, you need that sweater. And then I even went to therapy and I talked to my therapist about it, and we both agreed that like it was like a beautiful expression of self and that it was coming from a really grounded place and I wasn't just buying it to like be like Balenciaga. And so I went on Friday night to buy my Balenciaga sweater,
Yes.
and it just felt like such a surreal moment. Like in the beginning of my business, I was without a home multiple times, and we would line up at food pantries and be without food. And I would always have to sell. We would get to a point where like we would move into a new place, we'd be okay for like a little bit. And by okay, like we had like $7 in the bank, but we were able to like buy food.
Yeah.
And then we would get to a point where like we would start having to sell our clothes. But
Yeah.
I was the only person who had to sell my stuff. Like I had to sell my wedding ring. There was like my great grandma's. And I would sell every item of clothing I had until I only had like 2 outfits left. And so it just felt like so big to like buy this like big sweater. And it just like is so cozy. It looks so beautiful and crisp. And I feel like very excited. And I feel like embarrassed to be excited about it. And I was like really uncomfortable talking about it because it's like why talk about it almost. But it just felt like such like a big moment in my business to be able to buy it.
It is a big fucking deal. And I love that you did it. It's glorious. You look incredible in it and you fucking
Thank you.
deserve it. Like the period, that's it.
Thank you.
So I love that moment for you.
Yeah, so that's my high. My high is also Selling Sunset and Below Deck.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like really big into reality TV right now.
Love it. Love
Um,
it. I'm just like a Bravo whore, 100%. Like big slut for Bravo TV reality.
that should go on a shirt. Absolutely. Um, my low.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about like my mother-in-law situation.
Yeah.
It's just not like without sharing like the details of everything. Like
Mm.
we had an encounter over the weekend and it's just like I always leave feeling so small. And I just like I don't know, you put yourself out there because like obviously Sarah's my wife and I want to like do the best that I can to like
Yep.
be there and try and be as supportive as I possibly can be. And it's just so hard.
Yeah.
And I just constantly feel like I leave feeling far away from myself. Thankfully my therapist was so great. We had to go to an outing with her on Sunday, and my therapist was like, text me beforehand, text me afterwards, like bookend it with like messages
Yeah.
to your therapist. And I was like, I just love my therapist so much. So it's like nice to have that support. And like Sarah is like very supportive. Like it's not like an awkward situation between like Sarah and I. It's just like overall like an icky feeling. And
Yes.
that's just my low, because it kind of like lingers like a few days prior and like a few days afterwards. And we have to see her again tonight. And so I'm just like, I feel nervous in my belly.
There's really not much to say to that kind of situation, except it just sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I hate that for you. And I understand that to a certain degree in multiple ways with family and,
Mhm.
people that are in your life, not by your own choice, necessarily. And it being sticky and having to navigate it. And you can't just be like, fuck off, like you would if it was like your own full 100% your choice. And that's hard. There's just no easy answer there, except you have to just figure out how to navigate it the best you can. But it sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does suck. But
Especially for someone like you and like anyone who's like really big on like expressing themselves fully and like being seen as their full selves, to be in a situation where you feel like you can't or you're rejected for it is like, it sucks.
yeah, it's definitely not enjoyable. I will say though, and I've said this before, that Sarah has a stepmom and we're like extremely close, and she's just like lovely. And actually right now she is taking Sarah's youngest sister and dropping her off at college. And it
Oh,
was like so emotional. Like I didn't go to college and I love her little sister so much. And so it was like this like really beautiful moment that we all had yesterday. So like I always like, not that I need to like rationalize everything, but like I always like, I'm like, I do have like one mother figure and it's Sarah's stepmom. And like that to me, like after not having a mom my entire life, I mean, I have a mom. She's just like not existent in my life.
yeah.
To have like one mother figure is like, that's like that's more than enough.
I love that. I'm so glad you have her. So
Yeah,
glad.
she's the best. She's the
Oh,
best.
yay. I love
Yeah.
that.
What about you? What are your highs and lows?
So my low was that I was really sick last week. And I think sometimes like for me, there's like sickness regular, like if I was
Mhm.
normal, and then because of my chronic illness and how much inflammation and pain is in my body all of the time, when I get sick, that can get flared up and it just creates, I just like walk around feeling like ass for days. And then even
Yeah.
when I'm feeling better, I'm dealing with like, it feels like being hungover of like exhaustion, like so low energy. And I just feel like I miss like a week of life. And I know that it happens, like it is what it is. But sometimes it just makes me really sad for my body. And it makes me like, I'll just like look at myself sometimes in the mirror when I'm like that. And this is very dramatic and on brand for me, and just be like,
Mm.
am I going to live very long?
Yeah.
Like I'm turning 30 in September and I'm like, this is how I feel now. So, like, what does it look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20? Like,
Yeah.
what is this gonna maybe look like when I'm 65? Like, am I gonna be okay? And then I just have
Mhm.
to like not let myself spiral. And I also go into this rabbit hole of like, what is the point of anything? Why do we work? Why do we like, so I have to just, because Chris is like, don't just, please just rest. Like, don't think about death and the point of living right now. And I'm like, no, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So that was my
But still,
low.
it's so hard though.
Yeah, it is. And like, I think too, because like my chronic illness is invisible, I look fine on the outside.
Right. Right.
And I actually had dinner with some of his co-residents the other night, and one of them got there like early, like we did, and we were chatting, and I was just kind of explaining some things, and I was like, my genetics aren't great, and he's like, well, are you an Ashkenazi Jew? He's like, at least you're probably not that, right? And I was like, no, I am that. I was like, I have the BRCA1 mutation. And he was like, he just put his hands on his head and he was like, oh shit, sorry. It's like known that my genetics
Yeah.
are just like fucked. Like we have all of these problems. So sometimes those are the moments where I'm like, that's a surgeon I'm talking to. It's like, damn. And I'm like, damn, I'm going to die.
Oh Oh
So,
God.
but then I'm just like, go back and I'm eating like chicken parm. And it's like, like it's such a, like life is so fucking weird. I don't even know what's happening half the time. So
No.
that was that.
Oh my God.
Love that for me. Like it really is like one moment I'm like, am I gonna die? And the next I'm just like shoveling like rolls and chicken parmesan in my mouth. I'm like, this is fucking delicious. It's just like,
Yeah.
I think that summarizes it for me. And then my high is I said no to an unpaid work
Yes, you did.
opportunity. Hell yes. Anyone who works for themselves or shit, even if you don't, like a few years ago. So I was approached by a professor who I really loved when I was in grad school,
Mhm.
who's in some sort of role. And it's probably it's not her fault. Like it's always people higher up that make all these rules. She's just reaching out. But it's basically like, it's like pitched as like low time commitment, but it would be at least an hour a week, which to me, that is time. That's a set time in my schedule that I have to do something every single week. It's like paperwork, it's some training. It's like, and it's like a 9-month commitment or something, which for me is like the only people that gets that type of commitment for me are Chris, you, and my one-on-one clients. Like that's
Yeah.
it. Like no one else is, I'm not committing to weekly shit with anyone else.
Yeah.
So she like sent me this information, was like, would love to have you do this. I'm like looking at it. I look at this document of all it entails, and it's no money, but it's billed as like a great resume booster. And like in academia is so toxic. Like I can't even tell you the requirements for this. For me to even be able to do this essentially volunteer work is 2 years of grad school and being fully licensed, which means 2 more years after grad school, paying money for supervision, which thankfully I had a wonderful supervisor who did not charge me. But it's 2 years and tests and like all this paperwork to then turn around and be like, and now do this for free. I'm like, what? And a few years ago, I would have considered it. I would have been like, this is a good thing for my resume. It looks good. It's a good way to get my foot in the door. It's like the foot in the door to what? Toxicity, people extracting shit from you and being like, it's a good opportunity. Like, so I need email back, no, that I am not available for any unpaid labor.
Good for you.
I was very proud of myself for that.
That's a job well
Big
done.
high, big high. Yeah.
Yeah. We love that.
Love
we love
that
this
for
energy.
me. Like I do a ton of stuff for free all the time, especially in like the cancer community when it comes to health stuff, that for something like that, I'm like, somebody's getting paid, but it's not me. Like this is a private university. I mean, like it costs like 70 something $1,000 for me to get my master's. Like, no, someone's getting paid, but I'm supposed to then turn around and be like, let me do this for free. No. Hate that.
No, I'm proud of you.
So yeah, those are my highs and lows.
We love it. We love it.
Love it. Love it. Well, we are really excited to talk today about alcohol sobriety. So I've been talking about being alcohol sober for years now publicly. And like, I remember the first time that I shared about how bad my struggle with alcohol was, there was like people around me that were kind of shocked. And were like, didn't realize it was that bad. And like, since then, I've had so many people privately reach out to me to like ask about my journey, ask me questions, like, kind of share that they're interested in exploring getting sober. And like, I've had people, message me to ask me and Rachel, if we're ever going to talk about this. And I've just noticed like there's a sober curious movement of people that don't necessarily identify as like having a struggle with alcohol or as being alcoholic, but are like exploring what it would be like to not drink. And then when I found out you, Rachel, like don't drink, I was like, so I like geek out when I come across someone who doesn't drink, because I'm just like, tell me everything, because it feels so rare. And so we really wanted to like talk about this, like share our whys, how we got here, what it's been like. And this is not about judging people for drinking. It's not about in this like we're like on the throne of alcohol sobriety and we're like, we're better than you. But just more of a conversation of like why we made this choice, what our life looks like, how it impacts our personal lives and our business. And like, because for me, I know if I wasn't alcohol sober, I don't think I'd be sitting here with you right now doing this. I'd probably be at like my 6th stint at a fancy rehab facility on like the California coastline, like just disappointing my parents for like the umpteenth time and just like, being like, shit, Alyssa, like, are you ever going to be okay? Or is this going to be it? So, I mean, I'm glad for myself.
I'm so glad for you as well. I'm glad that you're here.
But I actually don't know why you're alcohol sober. So I'm like so excited for you to like share. all of the things of like how you got here and like what the deal is.
I mean, well, I need to say, because we're just like so honest on this podcast, it's
Oh my
like,
God. Okay. I'm nervous.
well, no, I'm nervous. Like that's what I was gonna say. Like I'm just so nervous. Like, and I know I was telling you this the other day. It's like, who am I to be like talking about this? Like it doesn't feel like I'm qualified. Like I never had like a huge problem.
Mhm.
But I mean, I'll share my. I'm just gonna get into it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna stop
Like get
talking.
into it. And first of all,
Okay.
who are you to talk about this? You are a human
Mhm.
who's alcohol sober. And that's what we're talking about. The end.
Okay.
I'm so
Period.
excited to hear this. Let's do it.
Okay. So my mom is a raging alcoholic and a
Okay.
drug addict.
Okay.
And she left my sister and I and my dad um when we were 3. My dad came home one day and she was laying on the ground, and she had just done something very terrible. And for like sensitivity warnings for the podcast, I won't
Okay.
share like what she did, but she did
Okay.
something very terrible to herself, and was like laying on the floor. And she had left my sister and I like in our cribs like all day long, and my dad just like came home to that, and that was the first time that like he realized that she had a problem. She had had a problem her whole life. It started when she was 14.
Mm.
um and so that was the first time that she went to rehab. And from there, my Nana stepped in, so my dad's mom,
Yeah.
and raised us with my dad.
Yeah.
She was our primary caregiver for the most part. Um, and my Nana was very vocal about like what was going on. Like she always talked to us like we were grown-ups. Like I watched the movie 28 Days when I was like 6. And I was always like very clear that my mom was a drug addict and an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And she put us in like extremely unsafe situations. Like one time we were in the car and she was high, and my sister was like in the middle seat and I was on like the end seat like closest to the door, and my buckle didn't work, so like I wasn't buckled in, and
Oh my
the
God.
car door wouldn't shut, so she tied a jump rope around it and like made me hold the jump rope. And like I like one time I like fell out of her car when she
Oh
was
my.
high. Like it was just like she constantly was putting us in harm's way. Um, she never had custody of us. She didn't show up to the custody hearing, so my dad had like full custody of us. But it was just like all I knew of my mom was that because she drank and did drugs, like this is why she behaved the way that she did.
Yeah.
And so from the age of like when I was like 7, I read some statistic that said if you are the child of an alcoholic, you have a 75% chance likelihood of also being an alcoholic. And that was just something that I like shared freely with like my teachers, my friends' parents. Um, so I was looking at Brianna, my sister, and I'm like, it's gonna be one of us.
Yeah.
Like
Like it's gonna be bad.
and I was so convinced from like such a young age. Like I just knew it was going to be me. Like I almost like willed it into existence. Um and so there was like once in high school where I drank, and probably more than once. Um but I chose just to not drink like my entire like I have a life. I was just like we're not doing that. I'm not going to like tempt fate. Um and then I like was 21. I didn't drink, like nothing happened. Like on my 21st birthday, I was so excited to like buy my dad wine.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of like a power play to it. Like I certainly thought that I was like better than other people. I'm like, look at me,
Yeah.
like I'm better than you.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like
Um
that's part of it. I do, and especially when you're younger, if you don't do it, you're like, I am so much more mature and
yeah,
better than everyone. Like everyone else, you are a mess. I have my shit together because I don't drink.
right, absolutely. And I was just so convinced. I remember the first time that I drank, it was like we were going to this thing that we had in Dublin, Ohio called the Irish Festival, and we just like dumped vodka into cups. And I was walking to the Irish Festival with my friends, and I was like, I don't want to be my mom. And
Oh
like
shit.
it was like all my whole life was centered on not being my mom.
Yeah.
And
Yes. That makes so much sense though, given everything you experienced. Like, oh my God, that makes all the sense.
yeah. And so then I was like 20, probably 21, 22. And I had like an eating disorder that I had for like 15 years in total. And I had a binge eating disorder, and it was after Thanksgiving, and I was married. And I remember screaming at my husband. Like, I would tell him, like, don't give me car keys, don't give me money, because like I'll go to the store and like buy like 6 pies and like I'll eat all of them.
Yeah.
And so he knew that it was like off limits, like, and I would like put these like pressures on him, like he was responsible for my actions, but like I didn't know
Yeah.
how to control myself.
Yes.
And I remember one day like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, give me the keys right now, like give me the credit card, like I'm going to the store. And then I like threw something at the wall. And then so he was probably afraid of me, so he gave me the keys.
Mhm.
And I remember driving there and I was like, "Oh my god, like it didn't have to be alcohol. Like I am my mother." And so after that, I ended up leaving my husband, and I had never gone to college. I had my kid, I had Cooper when I was 19, so I had
Mhm.
never experienced like a college life, a period of time where you experiment.
Yes.
And so I decided that like this would be a time that I would experiment and try alcohol and just like see, like, maybe I don't have a problem. Like maybe I'm not going to be like my mom because I had an eating disorder. So like maybe my
Check.
addictive personality like won't go to anything else now because I already checked it off the list.
Yeah, check that box.
And so I had Cooper for 1 week on and 1 week off. So the weeks that I didn't have him, like I was getting trashed.
Okay.
And this only lasted for a little bit. And I had like no sense of like how much could I drink? What is that? So each like time I was just getting like disgustingly sick.
Yeah.
And and then I started dating this guy, which it ended up being an extremely abusive relationship. And I remember he didn't drink, and I felt so lucky to be with someone who didn't drink. Um, but then there was just like this period of time where I was like, he was my boss, and he threatened me that like if I didn't stay with him that he was going to fire me, and I was a single mom, and so I needed to keep my job, so I
Yeah.
stayed with him.
Yeah.
And then we would go out to dinner or wherever, and I would just drink and drink so I could like stand being with him. Like it was a very forceful, like physically abusive relationship, and I just didn't want to feel anything.
Okay.
And so I would drink to not feel anything. And for a while I was like, all right, like we're doing this. Like you're going to have a problem with alcohol now, because like I had no way out. Like I felt like I had no way out. Um and then eventually I left him, and I left my job too. So I just like up and quit everything. And I just hated the way that I felt, and I hated the way that I abused it, and that was like enough for me. And so after that there was a period of time where I was sober, but I would go out with certain people, and there was just so much pressure
Yeah.
that I would have a drink because there was so much pressure. And then I would like hate myself in the morning. And so it was probably 3 years ago now when I just decided like, we're done. Like, that's it, period. Goodbye. Because I didn't enjoy it. I don't like, because I didn't drink it for so long. Like, I never liked the taste of it. It wasn't a social thing. It was
Yeah.
never a social thing. Like, I was never like, let's go get a drink. Like, it was always like, I can't stand your existence and I don't know what else to do. So it felt like a way that I punished myself,
Yes.
and it felt like it was the only way that I could also stay safe. And so there was just such this like poor relationship of like abuse with it, that 3 years ago, and thankfully Sarah doesn't drink either. Like occasionally she'll have, I'm actually like a pusher. I'm like, we'll be at a wedding and I'm like, get drunk. um,
Do it for both of us.
um, she's laughing at me right now. And she has like really bad rosacea too. So she's like, I can't. And I'm like, do it anyway.
Oh my God. I love y'all so much.
um, but like for the like 99% of the time she doesn't drink. And so it was just like so supportive to be in like a safe relationship, a place where like in Sarah's family, they don't drink either.
Yeah.
So it felt like I was like totally safe, totally accepted. And I'm like completely sober. Like I don't do anything that like alters my state of being.
Yeah.
Because I just don't. one, I don't trust myself, and two, like, I really like myself as I am. And there was like using it like as a form of abuse, but there was also like feeling so socially awkward and like
Yeah.
not knowing how to exist with other humans that like in the beginning when I was experimenting, I was really like, well, look at this fun girl. Like she's so silly. Like everyone loves
Yes.
her.
Yes.
Um, and that was like I was like, everyone's in love with me. Like I'm so powerful.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it was all like my whole thing around alcohol sobriety was like driven by my mom.
Wow.
And it's interesting. I had a coach once tell me like even like even like not being like my mom is still driven by my mom. So like my whole life is like driven by my mom,
Yeah.
which I resent. Um,
Of course.
but yeah, so now I just like drink water and juice and I don't drink any like alcohol. I drink juice.
I fucking love that you just said you drink juice. I love some good ass juice. Like, I feel like people who drink alcohol don't like, for some reason, like maybe they stop drinking juice or they think of like wine as like adult juice. And I'm like, no, no, there's no substitute for juice, motherfuckers. Like, juice is so fucking good. Like, y'all don't know what you're
Yeah.
missing out if you're not having some juice every once in a while.
No, I love juice and I love like it's so funny too. I've been like stressed out like as the rest of the world has been this last like 2 years.
Wait, why? Why? There's nothing to be stressed about. Of course,
Pandemic
everything's fine.
more. It's just like really getting to me. Um and like I get maybe it's the bipolar, but I'll just get like
There's so many options.
yeah, so many options. I'll get like bone tired, you know, when you're like tired in your
Yes.
bones.
Yes.
And I'll just look at Sarah and be like, I really need a Coca-Cola.
Like I need some sort of juice
Yeah.
immediately.
But it's always like I just imagine it, like it's the kind of feeling that like I imagine someone would say be like, man, I really need a drink. I'm just like, I really need a Coca-Cola.
I'm like that with like Sprite. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to reward myself with some Sprite or ginger ale right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm stressed the fuck out. And it really is. It's like my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So like,
Wow.
and there's still like now I'm like everyone in my life, like I don't Sarah has friends who drink as like most of the world does.
I
And I
know.
just
Yeah.
don't go out with it. Like to me, I
Mm,
like can't even stand to be around it or can't even like entertain it.
yeah.
Um, if I'm at a wedding, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I just live in my own world and dance and have like a
Yeah.
joyous time.
Yeah. Same.
Um, but in social settings, I'm just like boring. I'm out. Like I don't even like it's not even like because everyone around me is drunk and like they're like
Yeah.
and it just feels like you're like an alien.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm so glad it really does. You feel like a fucking alien. You're like looking around as you can feel people fading, like
Mm.
them as them, their sober selves are like slowly like fading the more that they drink and like the more the alcohol's in the system. And like they think that they're fine, but they're like, you're like, what are they talking about? Like, what is even happening? And you're like, I am too clearly conscious right now to engage in this dynamic. And
Yeah.
I feel like an alien all the time in those situations. I'm like, oh, people are getting drunk now. And like, this is my cue to like get the fuck out of here because
Yeah.
this is about to not be fun for me.
Exactly. It's like it's not fun for me. And I think that like my juice is like I love like a nice Zevia, like a nice mocktail, like, you know, it's just so much fun. And now there's like no judgment. Like I've been I would say mostly sober since I was well, my life.
Yeah.
And I had those like short stints of like and they really were short stints. Like they
Yeah.
lasted for like 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
But now there's really not like I don't think I'm better than anybody. I just
Yeah.
like don't like I don't it's not for me.
It's not for you. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that. You're very qualified to talk about this
Okay.
for many reasons. So I'm really glad you shared all of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. What about you? Tell me your story.
Yeah. Okay. So I come from a long line of people with mental health issues and substance abuse issues and addicts and alcoholics and a lot of family members. And my mom's dad, such a like sweet soul. Like he's visited me in like dreams and meditations. Like he's
Mhm.
dead. And I've like connected with him since he's died. But he really struggled with addiction, and that's really ultimately what killed him. And he was a very high functioning alcoholic for most of his life. And so that was always there. So my mom like really doesn't drink like at all, just like not. So and my dad would drink like a little bit, he'd have like a scotch or like a beer, but I never grew up in a house where I like saw my parents like drunk at a party or like stuff like that. And so it just wasn't a normal thing to like drink in my house. And in high school, like I was so overscheduled. I was a competitive dancer. So I was like, a part of a studio outside of school. So I go to school all day. I was in all of these like rigorous classes. I'd come home, do hours of homework, and then go and train for hours dancing. And then I would travel on the weekends for competitions or be training the whole weekend. So I like did not party in high school. I think I like maybe had some alcohol like a handful of times, but I didn't know what I was doing, not enough. Like there was people in high school that were like hardcore partying, and I just wasn't in that group because I literally didn't have time. I didn't think about it. And then I got to college and I went to UNC Chapel Hill, like it's like a big public university in North Carolina, great school, but the environment was work hard, play hard, right? Like everyone was there, was smart, was working really hard in class. And it was basically like, if you were doing that, no one gives a fuck what you're doing, but like everyone parties, or at least everyone I was around. And that was my first like foray into the world of partying. And I loved it. Like as soon as I hit that ground running and like as soon as I started drinking, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why people do this, because I was kind of always had like been in this box of being a good girl for so long. And then I finally got to college and I was like, wait, nobody is monitoring me. Like nobody's watching me. I don't have to impress. Like I'm in class with 300 people. Like my professors don't know me. I don't give a fuck. And I went wild. I was drinking all of the time, very, and it was really fun for a period of time. Like I got into trouble, pretty typical stuff that people, in college get into. But then I would say like by my junior year, I was swinging into like dangerous territory. So like I would make poor decisions when I was drinking in general. I did a lot of like disappearing from places and I wouldn't tell anyone where I was going. And I'm just like, I'm so fucking lucky that nothing bad ever happened to me, because I'd walk across campus at 3 a.m. by myself. Like I would just do stuff that was like, it's fucking dangerous, because I was so intoxicated. I was like, I felt invincible. And like what you were saying, I really liked drunk me. I was like, she's wild, she's fierce. Like I felt like I got to be all the things that I wanted to be and didn't feel comfortable being sober. I got to like, it was like playing with an archetype, and she was just like very wild and she did whatever she wanted. And so yeah, I like had fun. And then junior year came and like all of a sudden I was like waking up every day after going out and I had done something embarrassing. Like I was getting in like altercations, like verbal. I was starting to get really aggressive. I would initiate fights. Sometimes I would try and get physical with people. I'm not even 5'3". Okay. Like
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm short. And
I thought you were like 5'7".
Oh my God, you are one of many people. People meet me in real life and they're like, you are very small. I think it's because of my personality. I like carry myself like I'm 6 foot. Like I walk around like everyone get the fuck out of my way. Like I just have a lot of intense energy. So, but I'm very short in real life. And so I would like shove people in bars. I almost got kicked out of a nightclub in Miami for pushing, and like would cuss at people. And so very quickly, I started realizing like I would wake up in like with shame, and I've struggled with anxiety like my whole life, or at least since like my preteen years. And I forgot where I saw the quote, and it was like, drinking alcohol is like pouring gasoline on your anxiety. Like it. So I was like, I would go in these spirals of I drink, and I like didn't know when to stop. And so I would do all these embarrassing things. And so what was like, oh, I'm young and fun and wild. By my junior year of college, I was like, my hangovers were starting to get really bad. Sometimes I would like skip class, and I would just be in a shame spiral of like what I said to somebody, what I did I embarrass myself? I would go on like my weekly apology tour to like my friends, or, when Chris and I started dating, I was always apologizing to him. Like I would find out where he was and roll up to whatever party he was at and make a fucking scene. There were multiple times he had to carry me out of parties. Like we are talking mad, embarrassing shit. Okay. Like bad. And so I just realized like, oh, this is a problem, but I had no real reason to stop. Like that wasn't good enough. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I started having all this pain, and it felt like if you've ever had a UTI, I kept thinking I had like the most severe UTI. I was having all this pain in my pelvis, like severe burning when I was peeing, and I was like debilitating pain. I kept going to the doctors. I went to the ER several times because it was so bad. I was like, I need to be hooked up to morphine, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I finally got the diagnosis for my chronic illness of interstitial cystitis, and like the doctor, one of the first things they said to me is they were like, okay, the first thing you need to cut out is alcohol. It is the worst thing that you could do. It will cause you serious, painful flare-ups every single time. When I tell you, it wasn't that they were like, oh, this is incurable. That didn't make me cry. When they told me I couldn't drink, I lost it. I was so angry. I was like, I'm in college. I was 20 years old. That was what my whole life revolved around, was drinking. And so I refused to stop. I didn't stop. So my body was like desperately trying to heal and was in so much agony all the time. And I kept drinking. And I got to the point where I was like I was prescribed painkillers for when I was flaring, but I would go out, have a huge night of drinking, and then I would take a painkiller before I went to bed to try and like preemptively like, and I remember several times being like, could I die from doing this? And the answer is yes. I definitely could have gone to sleep and not woken up with how much shit I was putting in my body. I just didn't realize. And so it was really bad. Like I didn't realize I had a problem, but there was times I would like cry and I would be like, I have a problem. Like I would pregame the pregames. I would drink an entire bottle of wine by myself while I was showering and getting ready. Then I would go to the pregame party and I would do a bunch of shots. Then I would go out and I'd drink a bunch of drinks. And like, there were so many times I'd be like, I'm just going to go out and have 2 or 3 drinks. And it would never, as soon as I would take a sip, that was it for me.
Yeah.
Like I would like, it would hit. I love the way it tastes. I love the way it smells. I like salivate. Even to this day, if I smell alcohol, it's like my glands. It's like if you smell something you love, like that's to me, sometimes I just want to smell it because it like my senses get like, I like it. And so as soon as I would have like my first sip, I would know, oh, I'm a fucking liar. I'm going to get drunk. And I would justify it like, well, I'm not drinking and like snorting Adderall like other people. I'm not like doing cocaine and getting blackout. Like I was always had a reason because there was always people around me partying way harder than me. And like I wasn't dropping out of school. I was doing really well, but my personal life was like in fucking shambles. And so then I graduated college and I started working. And when I started working, I realized that like this lifestyle was unsustainable for me. Like I wasn't going to be able to have a job if I kept going like this. And so it wasn't like I hit rock bottom, but it was like slowly over a period of time, I just like realized I had to change, and not being in the college scenario where every social event was like around drinking really helped me. But like seriously, for me to get sober, I basically like locked myself in my apartment for like a year and just watched HGTV and went to work. All I do with HGTV was like super comforting to me. I would like watch it on Friday nights while I could hear people outside going out to bars and getting drunk. And I would just stay in my apartment and I would just watch it. And it was really hard. There was multiple times I went back and drank, and there was never like a rock bottom moment. I had many very low moments of like, shit, this is low, like this is bad. But it was never rock bottom. I remember the last time I like really drank, I just came home. I didn't even get like drunk, and I just cried because I was like, I feel so low, you know, doing this. Like it just made me feel really bad. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And I could feel how much pain my body was in. And I was like, I'm doing this to my body. Like, I don't have to be suffering this badly. Like, so what am I going to do? And that's when I like really stopped. And I tried like a half a glass of wine several years ago, but to see like, oh, have I healed enough like physically? And it was like, number one, my body was like, fuck no, you're not physically healed enough. And then number two, my penchant for addiction. I was way too excited to drink that wine. And I knew even after my years of not drinking, if my body had responded without flaring, I would have been like right all over it. And just a train wreck. That really is what would have happened for me.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you stopped.
Me too. I really would have been one of those people that would have gone to rehab like over and over and over and just been a hot ass mess. And like, it would have been sad as fuck. I have a very strong penchant for addiction. We've talked about this. Like,
Yeah.
I can do it with like anything. I can fixate on things. I
Same.
can like I've done it with men and relationships and alcohol and Skittles and like, you name it, I can make it a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's really interesting. I remember asking my friend who is a therapist. I say that every time.
I know you have so many therapist friends. I love it.
I do. I feel very grateful. I was having like a hard time with my mom, and I
Yeah.
was like, how do some people, or why do some people get sober and others don't? Like how do some people like stay sober? And she gave me like a longer answer, but like it came down to like their level of resilience.
Mhm.
And it made me so sad to think about my mom like not resilient enough. And I think that
Yeah.
there are other contributing factors,
Oh,
like
100%.
I mean so many other things, but like I just thought that like it's so like cold turkey for me.
Yeah.
And because it's like I don't want to like I don't know, I don't want to be like my mom. Like I don't want to, because
Yeah.
I could envision the same thing, like in and out of rehab, like never getting better, like leaving Cooper,
Yeah.
like my mom left us, like, it's just like I'm so glad we are where we are
Me
and
too.
we did what we did. Um, and I like that you said that there was no like, I mean, there were like a lot of like very low moments, but
Yeah.
like there was not like, because I think we think of like when people are stopping, there's always like a severe like rock bottom.
No, not
Um,
necessarily. They push that narrative, but it's not. You can have multiple like lows, but who defines
yeah,
what rock bottom even is? Sometimes it really is just being like, oh man, I can't keep doing this.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely had like a rock bottom with my eating disorder, but like
Mhm.
with drinking, it was just like that's going to be a hard pass for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like for me, I use drinking as a way to feel free. I wanted to feel free and wild. And the thing that
Hmm.
gave me the doorway to doing that then became just like a thing that added so much shame. And I didn't know how to be wild without using substances. Um, so
Yeah.
that was like really hard. And it's taken me years to learn how to like let my freak flag just fly completely sober. And like,
Yeah.
even the other month, I went and visited friends in Austin, and we were like going to be in situations that were kind of like party ish vibes. And
Yeah.
I said to a few of them, I was like, listen, I'm not going to drink, but I don't know who's going to be around. And if anyone's offering any hardcore drugs, like, and you see me like eyeing it, just like pull me for a chat. Like,
Yeah.
because I still, that part of me, that part of my
Yeah.
brain still sometimes is like, I've never tried that drug. I wonder if that would be fun. And it's like, I'm sure it would be fun. And then what
Oh,
happens? You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, so I even now I'm like, you know what? Let me, even though it's a little bit embarrassing, I'm like, let me just tell on myself to these
Yeah.
people so that I'm not just like secretly like doing drugs in the corner. And then like, because I was like, I can burn my life down in like an hour if I want to. So like, help me not
Absolutely.
do that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I tell Sarah all the time, like maybe I'll drink this weekend. Like, and I always just like throw it out there to see what she's gonna say. Um,
Yeah.
I don't actually want to. I just
No.
like it's usually when I'm like something really bad is happening and I'm like, maybe I'll just get fucked up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
maybe let's just go to like a winery, like, and we'll black out.
You know what no one ever told me, and I figured out, was like one of the hardest parts about getting and staying sober was
Mm.
all of the feelings. I did not realize my capacity to feel feelings so
Yeah.
intensely. I didn't realize how much alcohol dulled them. And like, alcohol created so much drama in my life that I could focus all of my anxiety. I would be like, just like focused on partying and what I did when I was partying and what happened, blah, blah, blah. And then once all of that was off the table, all I was left with was my own shit and
Oh,
like staring at myself. And I was like, oh, I've been avoiding this for many, many years. And now here we are.
Oh my God, it's terrible. And like, I can't use food. I can't use alcohol. I can't use drugs. Like, geez, like
I know.
sometimes I'm just like, fuck me. Like,
I know, when you like have a penchant for addictive stuff, it's like it really is, because the thing is, it's so fun. And I feel like no one says that. Like it is really fun in the moments. And like,
yeah,
no, the come down and the cleanup is horrible. And the carnage that we leave in our wake is just not worth it. But in those moments, like I enjoyed getting fucked up, and that's hard to reckon with, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Not a pretty truth, but true that nonetheless. Oh, and sober sex, having sex a lot without
Mm,
alcohol, that was intense too. There was just so many things that came into play. Like when I stopped drinking and I was like, I feel so many things all the time. It was
yeah.
exhausting.
That I mean, it is. I don't resonate to that because I never liked out the alcohol. Like I never like it
Drunk
wasn't like
sex.
a yeah, like it
Yeah.
was well, there was a lot of that, but in a
Yeah.
more like reckless manner. Like I was like I did terrible things to like friends and like just like who I was with and like what I
Yeah.
was doing.
Me
Like
too. Me
I
too.
was a monster.
Me
Like
too.
I would hate me if I were them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I actually was just telling Rachel before this that I decided the other night, when in a bout of insomnia, to look at my old Facebook messages from, like, we're talking like a decade ago ish, of everyone I had been involved with, and it was a fucking nightmare. I was like, oh my God, I was extremely toxic, very manipulative, very unhealthy. Like, holy shit, I am definitely the villain for at least a handful of people, and a lot of it was fueled
Yeah.
by alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Yeah.
of it was alcohol fueled. I just thought I was a wild, fun party girl. And really, it was like I was a hot ass mess, causing myself and other people a lot of pain, but it was very
Yeah.
normalized in my world. It was like, oh, this is what everybody does, and it's fine. It was like, at what point is the tipping point of it like not being fine anymore? And I
Yeah.
was really bumping up against that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So glad we're having this
I'm
conversation. I want to
proud of
answer.
us. Yeah, let's
I'm
do
proud
some
of us
questions.
too. Yeah, let's do some of the questions. What was the hardest thing about the transition?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the hardest thing about the transition?
Okay. I would say, like, if I had lived in the college atmosphere forever, I don't know if I ever would have transitioned out of it. Like for me, what helped me transition out was like leaving the college environment where my all of my friend groups and all of my socializing was centered around drinking. Once I
Mhm.
was out in like the real world and had a job, it felt much easier to just like hide. But I
Mhm.
will say, like, what made it really hard was like I literally had to hide because I did not have the strength and the capability that early in my sobriety to go out and be around people drinking and not do it myself. And so I really had to hole up in my apartment and like watch HGTV, and like I did not do social things for like basically a year almost. I really didn't. And I think that felt very lonely, and I felt like a loser. And it felt very confusing to be like 22 years old and like getting sober when we were all just like making money and people were going out as like adults to like actual bars and like nice places. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm disappearing. I felt like I was like
Yeah.
really out living my life through college. And then all of a sudden I had to disappear, and I was very lonely, and I felt like a fucking loser.
Mm,
That was really hard. I felt like
yeah.
such a loser. And like Chris and I don't know if we were together at that point. We were like very off and on through college and early on after we graduated. And like, so I don't know if we were together. And I remember thinking, how am I going to meet someone? How will I date someone? Like, who's ever going
Yeah.
to want to be with someone like me who like can't drink?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
100%. I think that like I really relate to that too. And in some ways, I just consider myself like a loner. Like I don't like do things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I will do a thing or two here and there. Um, but I wasn't like going out. Did change my dynamics with some of my friends because I was just uninterested.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I
Great way to
also didn't,
describe it.
yeah, and I didn't want to like tempt myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And there was always like, there was this one gay bar that I would go to, and every time I went to the bathroom, they'd be like, "Do you want some cocaine?" And I'm like,
Shit.
"No," but like, if you
Thank
keep
you.
asking me, maybe.
I know that's the hardest part is like at what point of being offered things like that are you not going to be able to say no or just decide in a split second, you know what would happen? It's like, what would happen?
Yeah, I know. Like, so the hardest part of the transition was just that, like, the few times that I did hang out with friends, like, dwindled to like no time with friends, which,
Yeah.
like, honestly, like, did not feel hard for me because I'm always like not doing things with other people.
Yeah.
Um, and it helps that, like, my friends live all over the world, so there was
Yeah.
never like a lot of like local socialization, but
Yes.
it did limit like even my business coach, she lives in Brooklyn, and she's always like, "Come to the city, like I'll take you out to get an amazing drink." I still can't tell her that I'm sober. And
You
I'm like,
could get a
"Rachel, just
mocktail.
say it." I know, but she's just like, "We'll get a drink." And I'm like,
Fuck.
Okay." I mean, I'm not going to, but like, I'll
Yes.
explain it when I get there. But like,
Yes.
so I think it was that is just like it's lonely, but like I'm thankful that I had Sarah. Like Sarah and I were together when we made the decision, and she's just like, whatever, like, so we're not going to drink. And she's just like so chill about it that
Yeah.
it really made it. And my dad stopped drinking too. Like,
Amazing.
um, so like everyone around me just kind of like, you know, was not, and it made it really validating.
You know what else was really hard in answering that
Mm.
question too is like how fucking weird other people were about me not drinking. Oh
I
my God. For
know.
years, they would get so sketched out and look at me like I had just told them that like I had a body in the trunk of my car. Like people would be like, "You're not drinking." And I'd be like, "No." And I'm talking like people I don't know. It was never like close friends. Like I didn't lose a bunch of friends. Like people close to me understood my choice and like loved me regardless. But like it would always be like some random fucking person I would meet and they'd be like, "Where's your drink? You're not drinking? Like, why aren't you drinking? That's so weird." And I'm like, "Why are you making this weird?" And it would
Yeah.
make me feel uncomfortable early in my sobriety. And then it like started making me angry as I got more confident in my sobriety. And I'm like, "Fuck you," because I don't want to. And I don't have to answer your fucking questions. I don't even fucking know your name.
I know. What people are so weird. Like, I was trying to think. I had something I wanted to say about the weirdness.
They think I just I think it makes them uncomfortable. And I'm like, then that's something
Make
for you to examine. Why are you uncomfortable that I'm not drinking? Like, why? That
Oh,
has nothing to do
100%.
with me.
Yeah, absolutely. It does make them feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but people really do. You know, people look at me with like, they're like, "Oh," and I'm like, "You could just like, it's like I'll just have water. Like I'm fine. Like
Yeah.
it's like we're fine here. Like you're making it weird."
Yes, people really make it really weird. And I'm like, so unfortunate. As I've gotten older, people are more chill about it. And I've gotten to the point, depending on the circumstance, if I think someone's kind of going to be a dick about it, I'll just make them really uncomfortable. I'll be like, "I'm alcohol sober." And then I just make eye contact aggressively. And
Yes, you do.
yes, I do. And people then they leave me alone. They not only don't ask any more questions, they do not speak to me for the rest of the evening, which is how I prefer it.
Good.
Yeah. So that's always a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. That's oh God.
Oh, yes.
What was the other question? That's the last.
How do people support their sobriety, like AA, support groups, and especially if AA is not it? Well, I never went to AA, like never. I thought about it, but like getting sober when you're like 21, like it doesn't feel, you're not like, "I'm going to go to AA," because at that time, I didn't even think I had a real problem. I was like, "Oh, I have to stop drinking because of my health problem. But if I
Mhm.
didn't, I would." And as I got older, I realized, thank God that I had to for my health, because I would not have stopped just because I was a train wreck. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it caused me such debilitating physical pain that I was like, I won't be able to have a job or a life. Like I'm going to have to like move in with my parents. Like that's how bad it would have been.
Mhm.
Um, so I never like thought about going to AA. And by the time that I realized in hindsight, oh shit, I really had a problem like with drinking. It wasn't just I had to stop for my health. It was like, oh, I was gonna like ruin my whole life. I did not feel like I needed it. But throughout the whole process of like getting sober, I was in therapy. Like I was in therapy. I lived with my sister Kayla at the time, and she was having some health stuff. So she stopped drinking because it was making her feel sick. And so the people closest to me, like I think not I wasn't around people that were like partying like that.
Yeah.
And I was in therapy, and that's really what helped me. And at this point, I just like, I don't really keep alcohol in the house. And it's just, I don't do any social events that center around that. Like, I'm not going to be chilling at breweries every weekend and like doing
Yeah.
shit like that. So that's
No.
kind of how I keep sober. And
Yeah.
I tell like, if I feel like, oh, I want to drink because I'm struggling, I will tell someone in my life. I'll be like, I've kind of been thinking about that. I'm not going to do it, but I just need to tell. And as soon as I tell on myself, like how I did with my friends, I'm like, hey, if someone's like offering cocaine or Molly, like, how about I not do that? As soon as I tell on myself, it's like the
Yeah.
secrecy of it makes it less tempting.
That's how I feel when I tell Sarah, like, you want to go to the city and like
Yes.
smash some alcohol. And
Yes.
I'm like, that's actually a bad idea. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I love AA. I didn't go through the steps for sobriety, but I went to AA a lot as a kid with my mom and as a teenager and as like a grown up. When she like was in AA, and I love everything about AA.
Mhm.
I love Al-Anon. But I did not, I think because I didn't get help for my eating disorder because we like couldn't afford anything at the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I was so used to like air quotes, like taking care of business like on my own,
Yes.
because I thought that was my only option. So I never had alcohol in the house either, except for a short period of time where I was like really abusing it and
Yeah.
to like function around men.
Yeah.
Um, that was like I remember this one time. Oh my God. I was like, well, I thought I was dating him. He was not dating me.
And
Um,
I've also been there.
and it was before he came over to the house, and I just like chugged some wine that I had bought for like friend like a couple weeks prior, but I was like, I'm just gonna keep that in there just in case. And I did that every time he came over, and I'm like, Rachel, like
Like,
this is not a good sign. Like if you can't like exist without like doing this.
yeah.
Um and so yeah, not having it in the house. And had I had I not had so much shame, like there was a like my mom did, she's like fucked me up like real good. She liked when we had issues. Like when I first realized I had depression,
Yeah.
she like felt like she was like had one up on us. And the last thing that I wanted her to think and know about me was that like I had any issue with alcohol, because it's always for her, it's always like I won, like I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Um, and so if I hadn't had so much shame, I would have 100% gone through all of the steps, got a sponsor, like I've been hardcore in AA.
Yeah.
But I think that there was just so much shame that I was like, nope, we're just gonna like cold turkey this. And I had Sarah's support. So for me, I wasn't in AA, but I was in a heavily, I had a friend when I lived in Brooklyn who was like heavily into like the sober curious movement. So I was
Yes.
like, I went to a lot of seminars and talks about sober curiosity. There was
Yeah.
like a whole club that you could be a part of.
Yeah.
And it was for people who like maybe like didn't have problems, but or what they would like consider a problem,
Yeah.
or like maybe there's like a little bit of something going on and it was just enough to be like questioning that.
Hmm.
um and so like the sober curious movement is like so empowering, so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of support in there. So if you listen to us and you're like, I don't think I have a problem, but I'm curious, like there's a whole movement for you, like,
There really
and it's
is.
super cool.
There really is. And I think when people are like, oh, I don't have a problem, it's like, if you are worried at all, or you feel like something's off, that's enough reason to look into like exploring, being
Mhm.
sober and like kind of figuring out what that could look like for you, or just changing your drinking. I just knew I could never do moderation. It was never
Yeah.
going to work for me. And I'm an all or nothing person in general. So that shouldn't have surprised me. So yeah, even now I'll say something, Chris, like, oh, do you think in like 10 years I'd be able to like drink? And he's like, even if you could, do you think that that's what you should do? And I'm like, nope.
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm so glad that we had this
Me
conversation. And I
too.
feel like if you're listening and you are curious, like I'm certainly not an expert in this arena, but like feel free to DM us if it
Yeah.
like brought up anything for you, if you want to have a conversation. I'm
Yes.
certainly open to like talking about it and just like witnessing you and your feelings. So know that like my DMs are open.
Yeah. And we had so many good questions we didn't even get to. So like we might do a follow-up at some point to this conversation based on feedback we get. Cause there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions and there's just so much here that we can't even cover in like an hour.
Yeah.
But I feel like this was like such a good start because this is a conversation a lot of people were asking for. And I love that because early on I was like, I'm a freak and I felt alone. Like everyone's doing this but me. And it's now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, it's not the case. And it almost never is.
No.
Well, I'm proud of us. I'm glad we didn't ruin our lives with our drinking.
Oh, amen. Me too.
Man, now I just make bad decisions completely sober, which is a whole nother story.
Oh my God. And the following episode will be on
how I make bad choices and I have no substance to blame it on.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. We hope you have a beautiful day and our DMs are open if you need it.
Bye.
Bye everybody.